Escaping Taiwan or depending on Taiwan? That's the paradox at the heart of the AI age. Governments around the world are spending billions to diversify supply chains and reduce strategic vulnerabilities. South Korea is studying Taiwan's playbook. Japan is investing in TSMC while funding a potential challenger. The United States is pouring resources into semiconductor reshoring. Yet, despite all these efforts, Taiwan's importance continues to grow. The more the world invests in artificial intelligence, the more it invests in Taiwan. So here's the question. Can the world truly reduce its dependence on Taiwan? Or has Taiwan become the indispensable foundation of the AI economy? And if that's the case, how will intensifying US-China rivalry reshape the future of the semiconductor industry? Welcome to the new Geopolitics of AI. Headlines usually highlight advanced manufacturing technology and industry-leading yields when explaining TSMC's dominance. But according to semiconductor research firm SemiAnalysis, TSMC's greatest advantage may be something far more difficult to copy: its ecosystem. For years, the semiconductor industry believed customers could switch manufacturers as long as another company offered comparable technology or lower costs. But AI has changed the game. Designing advanced chips today requires close coordination between chip designers, software tools, IP providers, and manufacturers, long before production even begins. Over decades, TSMC has built a vast network of partners through its open innovation platform, working closely with companies like Synopsys, Cadence, Arm, and others. As a result, customers gain access to tools, design resources, and manufacturing processes that are already optimized to work together. And that reduces development time and risk. That's why TSMC's advantage isn't just in making advanced chips, but its position in an ecosystem that makes it easier, faster, and more reliable for customers to bring new chips to market. Former Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger recently described what he sees as one of the world's greatest strategic vulnerabilities.
Taiwan has less than 3 weeks of energy reserves, right? Because the blockade, after 3 weeks, the island browns out. When you turn off a fab, it doesn't come back on for 90 days, right? The economic impact of a brownout of Taiwan is greater than the Great Depression.
Gelsinger's warning reflects a growing concern among policymakers, military planners, and business leaders worldwide. Not everyone agrees with his assessment, but his remarks highlight how deeply Taiwan has become embedded in the global supply chain. If dependency on Taiwan is considered a strategic risk, why hasn't diversification reduced that dependence? I'm Laurel Stewart. This is The Chainmaker. Joining me today in the studio is Jeremy Chang, CEO of DSET, Taiwan's first government-established interdisciplinary think tank, and Dr. Yeh Yao Yuan, Professor of International Studies at the University of St.Thomas, is joining us from Houston. Yao Yuan, I'd like to start with you. We just heard Pat Gelsinger's warning about the possible impact of a blockade on Taiwan. How seriously should we take this?
No, I think there would be voices from different camps, right? Some will say that that could be threatening the security of Taiwan and the security of the global supply chain of the AI or chip industry. But some will say that, we're well protected. I think I would take the medium ground, which means, the government of Taiwan is working on trying to, enhance our energy security and our energy supply for sure. But nothing can be done easily and quickly. So it's a long-term plan. And in the meantime, we have seen China using its military vessels trying to block, Taiwan's water, and that could that could actually bring some concerns. At the same time, if, we're not saying this will happen very soon, but if anything were to happen between Taiwan and China, if China were to decide to attack Taiwan, once they cut off the energy supply by, bombing like power plants or any other sort of strategies, that could certainly actually, just change the global supply chain of the chips. That's something, we have to take his voice into consideration, but not like extremely alarming at the current moment.
Okay, Yao Yuan, they're saying that it's not extremely alarming. Jeremy, what's your take on this?
Well, if you see how the importance of Taiwan's role in terms of the global supply chain, especially Taiwan is, I'm quoting Jensen Huang's term, like Taiwan is an epicenter for AI innovation because Taiwan is a core supplier for supplying AI hardware, not only semiconductors, but AI servers and other critical components. The supply chain is completely concentrated, especially here in Taiwan and this region. So whenever something happened here in this region, when let's say contingency, but there's another scenario where either blockade or quarantine, definitely there's going to be a huge impact on the global supply chain.
Yao Yuan, I'd like to come to you. We're just talking about interdependence there. If other countries, other governments are trying to remove dependence from Taiwan, they have been building fabs. Is it that they can't replicate Taiwan's ecosystem?
Well, the question is actually twofold because, first of all, a lot of countries say that they will be able to replicate the fabs of Taiwan. But to be honest with you, once you replicate a fab without the ecosystem, the fab doesn't really work or function as efficient or as productive as what we have seen in Taiwan. So, which means you actually need the ecosystem of the chip manufacturers in order to actually have an efficient fab. And having an efficient fab has to be supplied and supported by the ecosystems of the the chip industries. So, which means it's like chicken and eggs. You can't really just have chicken without the egg or have an egg without chicken.
What is it about Taiwan's ecosystem that is so specifically Taiwanese?
Well, it's not specifically Taiwanese because some of the supply chain that were from Netherlands, Japan, or even South Korea, or the state. So the point is our ecosystem is so unique, and perhaps what we can say is so difficult to be replicated is that they have been developing in chip manufacturing for 40 years or somewhere close to 40 years. So which means, you can't really just bring 40 years of experiences out from Taiwan and trying to start something new. For example, you can't really start something new in the state and say, hey, we have asked TSMC to invest, say, $100 billion, and then we will be able to actually do it just right away. No, the point is it will take time for other companies to actually set up their hubs in the state and be able to actually function like Taiwan. So first of all, it takes time for Taiwan to dedicate into chip manufacturing, and that cannot be replicated just easily. And second of all, we have the talents. We have also dedicated into electronic engineering educations for over 40 years. And that is something also hard to be replicated by just other countries. And third, what I would say is the benefit of Taiwan is we are small. Small meaning that everything is kind of close. For example, you could have a number of science parks in Taiwan, one in Neihu in Taipei, one in Hsinchu, and another one perhaps in Tainan or Kaohsiung. But they are all very reachable, which means just by car, you can actually ship the product or ship the supply chains, and necessary, and you can have a meeting just within about 2 hours of driving or even on a high-speed rail. So, perhaps, think about if you want to replicate the similar ecosystems in the United States. Just having product, having a specific part, shipping from one end to the other. Luckily, it will be 6 hours on the fly or 3 hours on the fly, or if you actually buy ground transportations, it could be, I don't know, like 3-4 days. So those are the benefit of advantage that we have to actually have such a very benign ecosystem in Taiwan.
So one country that does believe that Taiwan's semiconductor success can be replicated is South Korea. Through a series of ambitious national initiatives, Seoul is attempting to build a semiconductor and AI ecosystem capable of competing globally.
어떤 나라보다 빠른 속도로 인공지능의 핵심 요소를 확보해야 합니다. 반도체, 피지컬 AI, 인공지능 데이터 센터가 대도약을 위한 삼각축입니다. 이를 하나로 묶어서 속도감 있게 한국형 인공지능 생태계를 구축하는 일에 정부와 민간의 역량을 총결집해야 합니다.
South Korea announced its 3 mega projects for the Great Leap Forward, aiming to create a global semiconductor cluster, a world-leading physical AI ecosystem, and new AI infrastructure and data centers. Now, Jeremy, when Korean policymakers talk about the Taiwan model, are they referring to TSMC itself or the broader Taiwanese ecosystem?
I think recently they have a kind of anxiety that why all in the sudden after that we've been entering into the era of AI, that Taiwan is actually all in the sudden run faster than the South Korean's ecosystem. That's quite different than the previous decade. Well, the South Korean policymakers has been discussed why Taiwan has been so successful here in supplying the AI hardware stacks. But honestly, the South Koreans semiconductor ecosystem is as efficient as Taiwan. But just there is a division of labor. So South Korea is now the center for manufacturing and developing the HBM, the high bandwidth memory chips. This is South Korea's strengths. And Taiwan, of course, TSMC is a center, logic IC. Advanced node semiconductor chips is one of the most valuable part of Taiwan's semiconductor and AI hardware ecosystem. But on the other hand, I think South Korean policymakers and experts, they have been very, very focusing on Taiwan's complete supply chain because our model is, different than the South Koreans one because traditionally they've been developing their own ecosystem based on what we call, they call chaebol, cultivate the national champions and have a dominant positions for controlling the vertical integration of supply chain. But that's not here in Taiwan. So Taiwan is comparatively very, very bottom-up way for developing its own ecosystem. The Taiwanese government is kind of providing with environments, but most of the companies started to join the supply chain as SMEs, as small and medium-sized companies, but they grew up together because there's a concentration, as Dr. Yeh mentioned. There's a lot of features here in Taiwan, engineers groups working in different sectors. And on the other hand, Taiwan has OEM, what we call, so they're the very, very critical part of the supply chain as well. Say Foxconn, Wistron, Guangda, Pegatron, Weiyin. So these are very, very critical roles. They were previously kind of conducting the computer or smartphone assembly, mostly in China or globally, but now they're the key suppliers for AI servers. So their major role is, providing with the client service for this kind of supply chain integration services.
So I just want to ask, you mentioned that South Korea has its own strategic advantages, its own strengths in the AI ecosystem. What do you think that they can realistically replicate from the Taiwan model?
I think so. Each ecosystem has its own feature, as well as there is a path dependency. So of course, they see Taiwan's diversity. Then they see Taiwan's diversity currently is a resilient part or an efficient part for this AI competition. Their ecosystem is too concentrated here. They're in the Gyeonggi-do or in their capital region. So they want to create another supply chain or ecosystem in the west and southern part of South Korea. So kind of like learn Taiwan's case for expanding the ecosystem to the southern part. And
do you think they'll be successful?
Well, there's of course a challenge because here in Taiwan, you have to have everybody concentrated together based on efficiency, based on, so it's driven by the market power. It's not driven by the government's industrial policy. So now the South Korea government wants to lead this new development of new ecosystem. Of course, now SK Hynix and Samsung, they say, okay, they're going to join. But on the other hand, whether in the end of the day, they can successfully to create another ecosystem in the southern part of South Korea, it still take time. And on the other hand, it's still decided by, in the end of the day, the market.
Let's talk about Japan now. TSMC has already expanded to operate 2 fabs there. And while Tokyo welcomes that investment, it's also betting heavily on Rapidus, a local firm, which aims to start mass producing 2-nanometer chips as early as 2027. Like many countries, Japan wants to reduce its dependence on Taiwan. Now, Jeremy, can Rapidus realistically challenge TSMC?
Well, today we've been repeatedly to use the same term, ecosystem. So I think this is the keywords for answer your question. Because Japan has been absent to this advanced node competition for decades. Their most advanced nodes are 40 nanometers, and it's developed in the year of 2008 to 2010. So they're lagging behind Taiwan or other leading stakeholders for around almost about 20 years. So we found an ecosystem that's supplying the most advanced node manufacturing and developing is the most critical issue for them. So of course, they want to create a fab by the national substation. But on the other hand, you need ecosystem. You need customers. Customers are another very critical thing because the foundry model, you need firstly you have a customer to give the order for you, so you manufacture for your customer. So everything they have to restart it from the 0%. So this is a long journey for them.
Yeah, I mean, Yeh Yao Yuan, again, as Jeremy said, that we completely keep talking about ecosystems here. Japan's been bringing in the investment from TSMC while also subsidizing its own local firms. Is it trying to cooperate with Taiwan or compete with Taiwan?
Of course, both, right? On the one hand, TSMC investment will be able to actually enhance the productions of chips domestically and being able to actually supply to, tech companies, AI industries in Japan. So that's a quick help. But at the same time, Japan, of course, wanted to develop its own, chip manufacturers. So, I mean, on the one hand, they want to be less dependent with Taiwan, with TSMC. On the other hand, it's just, strategically, if they could actually replicate TSMC's in Japan, sounds great, right? I mean, every country wants to replicate TSMC, so I don't see why Japan will be exclusive.
So whether it's Korea learning from Taiwan or Japan balancing cooperation and competition, the result is the same. The future of chip making in the 3 countries is becoming increasingly intertwined, yet economics is only part of the story. Looming over all of these relationships is a larger geopolitical question. How will intensifying US-China competition shape the future of Asia's technology? Yao Yuan, is China's rise pushing Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan closer together? Or is it actually a source of division there?
Well, I would say the rise of China is endangering the security parameters of East Asian countries, including South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, of course. And just by the means of security, that's one of the reasons why they're getting a stronger tie with each other. But, you can't really ignore another big elephant here, which is actually United States. Since United States, Japan and South Korea are heavily tied with the United States on security and economically. So, once the United States wants to actually secure this competition with China and being able to have an upper hand and being able to actually blocking China into the first island chain, in order to do so, I mean, the easiest way or the most intuitive way is to allies Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Of course, it comes with some realistic challenges because, first of all, South Korea and Japan, they're like water and fires. They don't really talk over the past. And Taiwan hasn't really been recognized diplomatically by all three countries as we just named. And it also faced the strongest challenge from China. However, because of the TSMC and our chip manufacturers, Taiwan has become so indispensable to the global supply chain of the chips and to the East Asian economy. I mean, but by the means of money, I would say that it's much easier to actually loop Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan together as a concentrated tech hub in East Asia.
Jeremy, I'm interested in your take on this as well. Where do you see Taiwan emerging in this potential partnership between South Korea, Japan, Taiwan?
Well, we've been facing same challenge that, South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, we are very deeply, our economies deeply relying on the manufacturing industry, and we are export-driven, oriented economies. But because, China has a scale, China has national subsidies, China doesn't care about efficiency, but they are very effectively to wipe out their rivals outside of China. So they're keeping replacing South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan's role. There's a huge zone for South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan to collaborate with each other, especially for entering into the era of AI. It's not only about the data center, but also about the physical AI.
Yao Yuan, I'd like to bring you in here. I mean, as US-China competition intensifies, South Korea is also trying to balance its security and economic interests with its technological development. How difficult do you think that balancing act has been for Seoul?
It is extremely difficult, I would say. So, in the past, when the United States and China is in a cooperation or a model, where South Korea could be either hedging in Beijing and Washington, D.C., putting their security tie with Washington, D.C., but sometimes using their security tie as a bargaining chips to talk to Beijing and in order to actually balance North Korea. But on the other hand, economically, you can see LG, Samsung, and South Korean auto manufacturers will be able to actually, have their hands into American market, but into Chinese market as well. But the question is, after the Korean War in 1953, South Korean security is strongly and strictly tied to the U.S. strategic planning. And the Mutual Defense Treaty between South Korea and the United States is pretty much fixed. The South Korean security parameters, they disregard how much autonomy they want to have. So which means if South Korea keep pursuing certain security autonomy, it is quite likely that the United States may actually retaliate by their economic force, which means you may actually see that receiving higher tariff or reducing their market supplies to the United States. When the United States and China are in a competition more, you could either bandwagoning with the United States. You might be able to hedge, depends on what the specific issue that you were actually thinking about. For example, economically, some countries are still hedging, but security-wise, you can't really just hedge or balance against the United States. I mean, that's gonna face some challenges.
What kind of challenges?
That's forthcoming. Well, like I say, first of all, since South Korean military is so much integrated with the U.S. force, United States could actually leverage their troop stationing and their security guarantee to South Korea, so that they actually have to worry about if the United States were to. I don't think that will happen, but they could actually say they would try to reduce the number of soldiers in South Korea, and at the same time, like I say, they could actually try to retract their market dependency with South Korea, and that's going to have a huge economic downside for South Korea.
Fantastic. Countries may compete with and diversify away from Taiwan, but they continue to build around Taiwan. What governments are creating today is resilience, not replacement. Semiconductor fabs can be built in years, but ecosystems take decades. That's why Taiwan remains central to the global semiconductor industry. Thank you so much to Dr. Chang and Professor Yeh from Houston. Thank you, and we will be back after the supply chain index. Now let's take a look at Tech Biz. First up, a pre-release OpenAI model reportedly bypassed testing restrictions and launched an unauthorized attack on the AI developer platform Hugging Face during a controlled evaluation. The incident is raising new concerns about AI safety as AI systems become more advanced. Next, Saudi Arabia has become the largest buyer of Taiwanese drones, purchasing a record $47 million worth in June. The deal marks a significant milestone for Taiwan's drone industry and supports its efforts to strengthen a trusted global supply chain. And finally, the United States is reportedly considering sanctions targeting Chinese AI models over intellectual property concerns. The move could expand the AI rivalry beyond hardware restrictions and into the race for advanced AI models and algorithms. That's all for today's Tech Biz. Today's discussion shows that the AI race is ultimately a competition of ecosystems. While others work to catch up, Taiwan remains the benchmark. Thanks for joining us on The Chainmaker. I'm Laurel Stewart. See you next time.